Welcome back to another episode of CEOs of the Industry. Today we have Rob Brenneman from Brenneman Pork. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Jim. Looking forward to it.
Been excited to have this conversation for a while. So, from Iowa roots to a pork
Yes.
powerhouse, Rob Brenneman's journey. Can you introduce yourself, Rob, and share a little bit about your journey in the pork industry, how Brenneman Pork started, and what continues to fuel your passion for the business?
So basically, we're in Washington County, Iowa, number one county for pig production in the state of Iowa, and I think number three in all the nation. Um, we live on the farm here. I got my family's all involved. My wife's name's Shar, and she's definitely an important part of my life and our business. Then we've got four children: Tim, Jenna, Amy, and Carrie. They're all married. They all live within a mile. So all the four kids live within a mile of the operation. They're all involved in the operation. And we've got 12 grandkids. The oldest one graduated a year ago. He's going to play baseball. He's playing baseball for Iowa. And our second oldest one graduates this year. And he's going to North Dakota to learn how to fly jets. He wants to be a pilot, and he does a lot of flying around here today. And the door's still open on all the rest of them. I'm pretty sure we got some little farmers in there. They definitely love being around the farm and grandpa. So, like I said, we're in Washington County, Iowa. We're fair to finish. We have over 20,000 sows sitting right here out our back door. That happens to all be Prop 12. We we've got three big farms in Missouri that one's multiplication and the other one's and it's part commercial and it raises pigs and they all come back to Iowa. All majority of our pigs go to Columbus Junction, just about 25, 30 miles away. And there's also some that go to JBS and Ottumwa. We got roughly 53 or 4,000 sows. We'll finish out 1.5 to 6 million pigs this year. Um, we farm ground. The kids all have some ground. They all own some ground. They all have some ground of their own. They farm. And then Shar and I, we own some ground and we rent it to the corporation and it farms the ground. And we'll farm about 4,300 acres of ground. And majority of it's all corn. We have our own feed mill sitting here. I can't quite see it in the background there, but um, so it's sitting here on the home farm. The home farm is what we call the home farms right here in Washington County. And this is where everything starts and comes from. So, this goes back years. When I was a little guy, you know, I tagged along with dad and grandpa on the farm. Um, just every place they went. One of them I was tagging along because I was not an in the house little boy and my mom worked and so they needed some place. So I just tag along and in the early, I've been born in 58. So the early 60s, 61 too, my grandpa and dad built a new farrowing house and it had box stalls and there was 20 box stalls in it. And I suppose we had 80, 90, 100 sows back then. And that was way better than I barely got into the junky pull togethers and it was just barely rememberable. But once we got into this thing, it kind of became more rememberable. And so we would farrow, of course, you had pigs outside and mud and all that good stuff. And we started farrowing in those box stalls. We had let them out twice a day. It wasn't like today where we're every day there's pigs in it. And so we'd let them out twice a day. And then as that materialized, I just thought that was pretty cool. Then I'd go to school and come home on the bus and boom, go out there. And, so as I matured, I just always liked pigs. We had cattle also. Um, but, when you're a little guy, cattle isn't the thing you hang around with right away. So I just kind of liked the pigs. So I would catch the pigs and I got a scar on my leg from the sow biting me because I probably was a little too close at the time. So that just fueled my passion to raise pigs. And so as we went through school, we come out, we let pigs out, sows out, we do it. And I just thought that was awesome. And then as I got a little older in high school, when we went to, I always wondered how I was going to make things work. And, we didn't have the ground and stuff that everybody else had. And the ag teacher, Dwayne Sprouse, said, "Where first words out of his mouth, he was a freshman, we were freshmen, where there's a will, there's a way." And I've never, ever forgot that. And I thought, well, I can raise pigs. I had my license. And so my dad gave me 9 pigs when we were littler. I kept the gilts out of it, kept 3 of them and bred them. And next thing I know, somebody had a little 3-corner piece. They didn't farm it. I'd put some A sheds on it. Somebody have an old barn and I'd put sows in it and just kept doing that. And when I was, till I was, and my dad encouraged me. He didn't stop me. My grandpa balked a little bit because he always wanted to argue, but my dad always gave me the permission to do what I wanted to do as a big boy. And so that's what I did. And so when I graduated from high school in 1976, I had 120 sows. I had a brand new pickup, brand new 4430, farming just a little bit of ground. And life was good, had no debt, had $46,000 in the bank, and I was ready to take the world on. And so that's kind of what started everything, and the community was very supportive. Anybody that wanted to get up and work, they were all about it. And we live in the right area to raise pigs. And so as that materialized, then I'll get into Brenneman Pork here right after that. So, but that was just the passion to raise pigs, Jim. It was just addictive, and just wanted to do it.
So you had the passion and then you took on the world. So
Yep.
when you took on the world, what were the key moments that shaped the growth
Yeah.
of Brenneman?
So when I when I graduated from high school, like I said, in '76, me and a buddy ran around and we did, we just worked. And then in 1979, I met my wife Shar. Actually, I think it's '78. And then in 1980, we got married. So when we got married, she was young and she had just got out of college. She has her nursing degree, and so she takes off and goes to work in Iowa City every morning, and I raise pigs. And so we continue to do that. And I built part of my business was built with dad in the back, with as a partner. And then in 1982, as the farming economy got rough, life got a little rougher and tougher. That money we had to bank when I graduated was gone, and plus about everything else because times were difficult. So in 1982, we had some struggles with the bank, and so we decided that we would raise pigs on our own, break up our partnership. And so I took my 150 sows and brought them over here from home and did the same thing. Terry Char's dad had an old barn. We put the sows in there and we started to do stuff. And I tried to convince him that I could raise pigs no matter what. So biggest turning moment was 1983 when he agreed to build us a farrowing house and a nursery on the place where we live today, and I would pay him back over the next 5 years. And so I'd convinced him that I wanted to do it right. So we started that process, and then the summer of '83 it didn't rain. The first feeder pigs, were going to go out the door of that fall. And so I'm like, I need to do something else also. So I went to work for I went and got a job at UPS, and I was a driver. And so I started that job in the summer of '83. And then we sold our first feeder pigs. We did not sell our sows. Sold our first feeder pigs in the fall of '83 for $4. So we started out right away learning how to lose money. And I continued that. Char worked nights at the University Hospital. And then we had our son Tim, and so she'd drive up at nights and go to work, and then I'd have the neighbor lady come up and watch Tim, and I'd go out and chore, and we just kept that process going, and we would meet each other coming and going in the morning, and we had another child, and then so in the fall of 1987, I like, I think I can, I think I know how to raise pigs. I'd spent the time with UPS, and I learned I didn't liked the fact that I had to work somewhere else, but the thing it taught me, I got more education. So pivotal moments again, I learned how to organize. I learned how production worked and how when you organized and you got to be on time, and you got to make stuff happen. I learned that working for UPS. And how I learned that is if you started your morning route at 8:15, first of all, you could never be late or you were history. And then if you got to the, let's say, the alley in Washington, the Pepsi truck was there at 9:15. If you didn't beat the Pepsi truck to the alley, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my, you're behind him for an hour and you lose time. And how does that matter to the pork industry or my job? Well, I learned that okay, we got everything's got to be timed. If we start farrowing every, four times or four times groups of four or five instead of four, as long as we bred all the sows in 2 days, and as long as we farrowed all the sows and weaned them, and it's just like clockwork. And and I realized after working for UPS that that's what we could do. So in '87, I quit UPS, and my wife quit her job because we were literally meeting each other, coming and going. And so my wife quit her job, and we dedicated ourselves. We're gonna make a living raising pigs. At that time, we didn't have much ground. We were gonna raise pigs, and so that's what we started doing. And as that materialized, we just kept going and going. And every year we would build something, a small building, a nursery, and then we build another G barn, and just small things at a time and put it together. Because the last thing I want to do is go back to A sheds and 10 by 20s because there was no way that was efficient. And so we just kept doing that, and we got really good at it, and that's what we did. And then when we got to, one of the key moments I think is what started our major growth was, well, we bought wean pigs from Carthage for 5, 6 years and grew our finishing because we had people who wanted to build finishing. And we grew our finishing, and then we thought we can do a good job with the sows. So we ended up building a sow farm in Missouri, just outside of Mexico, Missouri, and at that time it was a pretty big undertaking because it was 9,000 sow unit, and that was kind of unheard of in 2011 and 12. So, but we started that process, um, and we didn't even hardly have sows bred, and I had the wild idea that we should do another one down there, and we found a site outside of Paris, Missouri. And so we started that and got the bank's backing, but the number one backing I had to have was my wife's, because if Char did not agree with things, it did not happen because she didn't want us to get in trouble. So we built those two sow farms down there. We kind of designed those. My goal was to design those sow farms so that somebody wanted to work in it, because over the years you had a sow farm and it was pieced together, and you had to go here and it took 10 minutes to walk over there. But how do we organize this so that if I was working in it every day, how do I want to vision that happening? And so I spent hours and days designing it. So we did things that other people had not done. We actually made the hallways wide enough that more than one sow could run down, and we had sort panels where they needed to be. We had doors where they needed to be, and that we had filtered our home farm with filters for PRRS and stuff like the 2 years before that. So we built those farms both filtered from day one, and started out with clean sows, and we're all PIC genetics today. We have, and like I said, we have our own internal multiplication because the one farm down there makes all the gilts for the entire system. So that was pivotal because we thought, how good can production be? And that was right out of the gate of PED was shortly behind that. And we had the one farm broke with PED, and the other one was getting ready to farrow. So we thought we should figure out how to get PED to that farm before it farrows. Tracking PED wasn't as easy as we thought it was. So that kind of made me think a lot. How did we get in the first place? And I think we'll talk about that here later. But I think that, so we actually took PED to that farm. We Didn't change our clothes because we knew the health was the same. That didn't track it. We put it in a feed bin. That didn't track it. So we actually got close enough after 4 weeks that we decided that we better just literally feed it to them. That's what we did. Now that worked. And so we broke the whole thing. But we'd overbred anticipating that. So then we learned how to load up sows. So you have, load every sow up to 17, 18 pigs. And holy mackerel, that worked. So it's like, okay, we need to rethink how we're doing things. If farrowing crate's the most expensive part of the facility, let's utilize it every day of the week. And that's what we've done in our entire system. So that's where we start.
So, Rob, what personal philosophy drives your leadership and decision making, and how do you stay energized after decades in the industry?
So I have everybody would admit that I'd probably be pretty tough to work for, and I always have been. So to pass the smell test here, you got to work. There's no not working, but I have mellowed some over the last 4 or 5 years. But my number one philosophy is you got to show up. I got a word that goes in between that, but I'm not going to use it here. But you got to show up, and um, you got to know what's going on. And so I'll just show up on a finishing site or a sow farm, and it kind of makes people nervous because I'm not there to criticize. I'm not there to do any of that stuff. I used to be, but I'm not that way anymore. I just want to know how's it going? What can we do to make their job better? So show up and say, wow, I didn't think we were doing it that way. And maybe they need some help here. So what do we need to do? And you don't learn that on a conference call. You don't learn that on a Zoom. You don't learn that, on phone call after phone call. You got to physically see what's going on. And my physical seeing what's going on is how can I make the job better for them? Because if I make it better and if I make it easier to move the pig and I understand what's going on, now I'm in the know and I can help coach and lead. For me, it's all about coaching. And I wouldn't be the best coach. My dad was a great coach. So I've had to work at being a coach, but I've got people in the system that are coaches and leaders, and it takes both. So, you got to show up and you got to work hard. That's the way we operate.
Now, what about the nutrition mindset? So, changing the industry's direction. I think nutrition, overall health is a passion for you, and you think the industry has gone down the wrong path. What do you mean by that, and what needs to change, Rob?
So I think, like you hit it. Nutrition's been a passion of mine since my brother passed away, and that's been 7, 8 years ago. And that's been a passion of mine for the human side. And in the same development as you worry about the human side, or you work on the human side, there's things we do on the pig side that also help. And I think as far as I'll work on both, I think as far as the pig side, we've kind of just feed pigs at some point in time. And when I brought on Jeremy Robinson, gosh, it's been 12, 13 years ago, he came from research. And so at that point in time, we thought, wow, we probably need to do a little better job of our own. And so we built two big research, one's nursery, one's finishing. And we consistently internally in the real world where PRRS exist and everything else exists, not just some cream thing out here that doesn't have any problems. We like to deal with things in the real world with real problems. And so we set out the nutrition, to make things better for the pig and the sow and all that good stuff. So we've done a lot of stuff on the research of that to make that world better. Then at the same time, on the human side, I spent the last 4 or 5 years changing my mindset on that and trying to get way better. I listen to a lot of doctors on podcasts. I've got a couple of those doctors that I work with. And back to the point on that, I think as an industry, as a pork industry, we spent too much time focused on lean pork. And I think we spent too much, I think The pork, the other white meat, was a great campaign, but I think it compared us to chicken. And I think since that's happened, what, 85 or so years, whatever that year was, that we've tried to compare ourselves against chicken, and we're better than that. And we've got more options than they have, but chicken without breading isn't much. And you put breading on, now you've hurt the nutrition and quote the lean part of it. But I'm the opposite. I believe the fat's a healthy part and the lean's not. But I think we spent too much time on focusing on that part of it. In process of doing that, we lost some of the flavor we had in pork, which we were gearing up the way we fed pigs.
So with that being said, Rob, what nutrition principles do you believe that aren't widely adopted?
Well, I think that we're better than we were. I think there's nutrition principles, that each pig kind of is an individual. And so when we look at different rations for different pigs, um, I think we could definitely do better there, but I don't know how we do that without a major expense. Because when you individually feed pigs, they perform differently. We all know that, just like us. And I think as far as the human side, I think that fat's not the evil. We need to incorporate that into our diets on a regular basis. And that's what I've done over the last 4 or 5 years. Um, and I think as humans, there's things I put on a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, about 2 weeks ago, thinking I don't need that, but it's amazing when you watch it. What I used it was for learning and to prove what I was doing was right. And the minute you eat carbs, the thing goes up, and then you can eat all the fat you want and it doesn't move. And if you believe insulin's the precursor of diabetes and everything else, yeah, it is. And you don't get that with fat.
So I want to get to the pork's role in the diet shortly, but when we talk about the pig nutrition side for
Yep.
Brenneman Pork, how do you guys approach nutrition differently than the norm? And then what impact does it have on pig performance and pork quality?
Okay. Excellent. Excellent question. So we've done, like I said, with research, we've done a lot to perfect that feeding of the pig. And then 2 years ago, when we built our farm here at home, we put in Gestall feeders and all, Maximus and part of it, and Gestall and part of it. And we run two diets in those feed lines, and we weigh a lot of sows. And so we've perfected we've tried to perfect how we feed the sow and each sow individually. So when we did this, we have the ability to feed two rations and identify each sow, what she's eating, what parity she is. And it's amazing. We in the old days we fed everything as if it was a gilt because we didn't want to short them when they got to the farrowing house. And we were way overfeeding our sows. And we realized that so when we started feeding the sows to what they had and the parity they were on and the weight they were, we increased the productivity and the size of the actual wean pigs on the gilts by feeding them more of a gilt ration. And not all gilts and sows are the same. Some will eat 20 pounds a day and some will eat 15, and that's all they're going to eat. And so by creating those rations that would feed each sow individually, and that's not so it automatically dispenses it. You don't have to do it with the scoop, and that has been mind blowing. And I'm positive you got the same thing in a finishing barn, but it's really hard to feed them individually. But someday I want to practice with that because I believe that is a great opportunity. And then when like the quality of the meat, there's no doubt that has you balanced that diet for meat quality and meat quality. A lot of the meat quality comes from the packing plant because if they slaughter the pig right, it definitely helps the most. But we can improve meat quality out here, and they'll as a consumer asks for that, and we produce that. We've got tools we haven't used, and might be tools we don't like barley and wheat and some of that stuff. But we'll kind of get into that. But right now, I know that the rations that we have fine-tuned have put color back in the meat. Um, we get a little more marbling with what we do, and I know the Japanese like that. I know Tyson really likes that.
Well, I know the well-marbled pork drives flavor. So when we rethink pork's role in the diet, it connects back to you and your health journey, Rob. I think 75% of your diet is pork, more specifically the well-marbled pork. Why is that essential and how does it influence flavor and consumer satisfaction and how did it play a role in your health?
So, first of all, um, I think everybody knows that they're not going to eat something that don't taste good in general. I mean, you might fight it down some days if you have to, but we're going to eat what we like. Um, Fat and pork fat is definitely a key to that. And we're also going to eat what we can afford. And so price is also one of those keys. So I think as we move ahead and pork, I used to be probably 50-50 beef and pork. Nothing against chicken, but I'm not a chicken eater. I don't eat stuff that swims and flies. I'm kind of a picky eater. So my whole day's balance of food is pork and beef, and it's majority pork. And it probably used to be more beef, but with the flavor that's come into pork over the last few years, I know that as producers, we've done quite a bit better job of producing a quality product in general. And so pork is, even if you're not your own pork, I can get really good pork in Florida, and that's awesome. Whether it's Publix or whether it's Seed to Table or whatever it is, it's really good pork. And I think that as producers, we need to tap ourselves on the back. And I know there's producers that say, we don't get paid for that. I say, but in my mind, yeah, we might not, but we do because we get to sell more pork, right? And I think today you'll see that's happening. But I think that, I mean, pretty much every day at noon, I have ground pork burger for lunch. Every day. Whether I'm here in Florida, and well, if I'm in a meeting, it's hard to get them, but and I just think that's the most balanced piece of meat we can eat because it's got the perfect balanced flat fat. It's easy to cook, and I just that's what I eat. And then I love pulled pork and I love ribs, and so I just pork has improved so much that I enjoy eating it, and it's a flavor. It's all about flavor. That's why I eat it.
So well-marbled pork, sometimes it's perceived that it's not healthy. How do you combat that perception, Rob?
Um, I'll combat that every day. Just from there's several guys that I know that have switched over to the carnivore diet. And now, granted, if you start listening to those YouTubes, they talk about grass-fed beef and they talk about beef in general. But one of the doctors I work with on that, we're going to switch some of this around because I've got some tests here that I had ran on all those as far as the quality of fat and all that. But once you adapt the fat mentality or the well-marbled pork or whatever it is, whether it's beef or pork, you won't go back. Um, First of all, now if you're vegan, so what? That I get it, but anybody's going to listen to this is not going to be a vegan. So I think as my numbers have, and you don't take cholesterol as the reading that you go by. You got to get the insulin, and you've got to get all your cholesterol, your HDL, your triglycerides, your LDLs, and you got to balance that all out. And if you don't eat meat, that means you eat stuff that contributes to your problem. And I know that people that run think they got to have carbs to run and all that stuff, but I'm telling you that the healthiest thing you can eat is meat. And being how I'm a pork producer, I believe the healthiest meat you can eat is pork. And I believe the fatty content in pork in general, it's kind of balanced right. Ribeye and beef has fat in it, but not every piece of beef does. Like pork, whether it's ribs, butts, loins are a little bit short of that, but some of these loins that we make today have a little internal marbling. But I'm telling you, it's good for you. And if you get to the right YouTube channels, you can follow 100 doctors that totally agree with what I'm saying. Fat's good for you. Fat's good for dementia. It feeds your brain. It's good. It helps less dementia, helps your memory. It definitely balances out your insulin resistance. And if you don't believe that, put on a glucose monitor and eat some carbs. And then the next day, eat some fats and see where the numbers go. It goes down 20, 30 points. I can guarantee it because I've seen it for the last 2 weeks. I've practiced with some carbs. I ate some potatoes. It goes straight up and balances out. But anything that's pork stays straight down. And beef's the same way. But the mentality needs to switch, and I think you can get a little bit of that with what Trump's doing on mega, as long as they don't go too far on the wrong side of that one.
Now, what about your production model? Does it focus on marble quality, Rob?
Absolutely. Yep. So we have all Duroc. Well, granted, if you're making the mamas, they don't have any Duroc in them, but all the product that we sell, the Tyson and JBS is Duroc sired. And when we work our today it happens to be PIC. We've got a great relationship with them. So we kind of look for that in the bore coming out, the bores we put in the stud. We kind of look for a little bit more well marbled product, coming off of that. And so we've done a lot of trials, and and you get paid on lean, so you got to kind of have the balance of both, where it can't all be back fat because then you get penalized. But if it's internal fat, it's awesome. It's second to none. It's good.
And you touched on some YouTube videos that you can find. Is there any other feedback you hear from chefs, consumers, or retailers?
Oh yeah. So we PFG Performance Food Group. They're a food distributor. They get our product out of Columbus Junction, and they're taking a decent amount of that. So that gets to a lot of chefs, and then also locally, the my son-in-law Kyle gets meat for guys. He gets it from Tyson, and we make sure we get our meat. So there's some of these local chefs. We've got a guy in the office, our safety guy, Josh Carr. He competes nationally with grilling. He won the state fair, I think, last year or the year before with our product. So, so as we get out and hear that, the feedback comes from the chefs and the grillers. And uh, we got a letter here about, I don't know, a week or two ago from somebody in Orlando that used our product and says, we need to get this everywhere. That came through PFG. Um, and the product is excellent. It cooks up well, and that was pork chops. And so I'd be part of the pork loin. And then, when you get these guys around here that are grilling, they're about the ribs and of course the butts, because that's what that's all about. It's not pork burgers, but I'll tell you what, our pork burgers are amazing. They're incredible.
So let's talk about consumer education, reversing the lean pork narrative. So how can the industry in general, do you think, better educate consumers about the value of well marbled pork and shift the focus away from lean, as you've talked about and you're passionate about?
I think it's coming as we're going through, because I know that the increased demand for ground pork, which everybody knows is, I mean, you can make it as lean as you want, but ground pork probably has a lower price point of selling than what hamburger does. And once you get used to ground pork, I mean, I love my hamburger, but once you get used to ground pork and you see the value in it, that's the first place that I think the value pays, and you enhance everything that goes around it. And I think, as a consumer, for 50 years, we've got the bad rap on meat being a problem. That all started probably in the burger fries days. So when all these places sold burgers and fries and shakes, and the increase for meat demand went up in that area and fast food and stuff, well, of course, the problem of heart disease and everything, obesity all went up. So what else could we blame it on? They picked meat. The other two are the problem, not meat. So I think we're gaining ground, and I think with the Maha movement, I think you'll see ground gain. There's more people that are going that way than there ever has been, but there's still a big gap. And at the same time, if you truly believe that lean is healthy, and that's fine, go ahead. And we got the perfect product for that too. Pork loins. So we want to, we still got to sell pork loin, but pork loin needs to have some marbling in it. And if pork loin has a little marbling and you cook it right, it's fantastic. But you just can't dry it out. So I think as we educate the consumer, the consumer on that, educate, I don't know if educates or coach, I don't know which the word is, because people, when they get out of school, they no longer like to be educated. At least I know I don't. So
So when you talk about education, are there marketing examples that inspire you?
absolutely. So I think CAB, certified Angus beef, is huge. That is, when I showed Angus beef, I'm gonna age myself. 55 years ago at the state fair, nobody wanted it. But if you crossed it with the Charlet or something that made it a little taller and look a little leaner, everybody was in. But I think what certified Angus beef has done to the beef industry, look at everything that's got that involved now. And why is that? It's taste, flavor. How'd they get the taste and the flavor? They got it with fat. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. So I think as you look at the quote coaching or the educating, um, we in the pork industry over the last 3 or 4 years have with putting the Duroc into the mix. There's a lot of Duroc based animals today, and there's no doubt that's enhanced the flavor of our pork. And so once again, the Duroc based, there's not many people using that for a sale point, but I think they should. Legion's Pork with PFG is another brand label that I think is doing a tremendous job of marketing that quote Duroc pork. And I think there was one other one that I thought about that as we were talking there, but those probably are the two key ones I think that would be huge. And then, yeah, I think that would be huge.
Now, what role would producer
Oh,
transparency play
I
in?
know what I was going to back up there. Well, this will go right into what you're talking about.
You remember?
Finish your question. Finish your question. I think
Yeah,
I,
the producer transparency, does that play a role in changing the perceptions, Rob?
yes. Producer, but let me go back to that other one minute. So the pork board is releasing a new campaign. It's not out yet, but it says it's taste what pork can do.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help that in flavored enhanced part of that, Jim, and help coach and lead. So we're going to lead our own industry, hopefully down the road of a higher quality product and more demand on that product. And then when you get into transparency, it plays right into the transparency. If you have transparency, you build trust and confidence in the consumer, and then they believe in you. So you open your doors, quote, with all the podcasts and all the videos and all the stuff you can put on YouTube today, and you show what you're doing, and people see that it's not what they've been told, maybe. And you the more transparent you are, the better. It's when we started transparency, it's been probably 10, 12 years ago, and my daughter-in-law started showing videos and stuff. I'm like, ooh, kind of made you nervous, because you didn't know what animal rights activist was going to be sitting on your doorstep the next day. But I think if you showed them what you're doing, just tell me you don't like what I'm doing and we'll work on it. But transparency is huge. You can't hide anything today.
Now, Rob, do you think pork should be positioned like a premium meat or a craft product?
Jim, I think you can do both. I think you can there's no doubt that, like one of those chefs that I think he was from, oh, I think he was from the Tampa area in Florida, sent me a text one day and said, "Are you sure this isn't beef?" Because it was colored, and so they got some Tommy Hawk, bone in pork chops, and they were second to none. So I think we can be extremely good. I think we can show up in the Ruth Chris Steakhouse type of thing if it's cooked right someday. And that might take, I mean, That would be awesome. And I think we can do a craft meat, and then I think we can exist to the everyday consumer's checkbook. I think we got it all. There's times that I think a pulled pork sandwich is is top end because it's just awesome. So I think we've got it all. We've got the flavor, and that fat's providing that flavor, and we can do anything we want with pork.
The diversity, the flavor, and like you said at
Yeah.
the start of the show, kind of you built one step at a time. So what we can do with the pork side of it is like Ruth Chris and the different things, one step at a time to get there.
And the pork board, David Newman and his crew they're after that one. They're everywhere. My daughter-in-law was in Napa here last week, and they did a culinary institute, and she came back and said those guys are doing amazing, pops, and she said they're going to get somewhere. They're coaching and educating the consumer and the retailer. You have to do both, and even the packer. So it's those guys are doing an amazing job with the money we're sending that way. So I think everybody should be proud of that.
Now, survival and biosecurity. Biosecurity is a hot topic in the industry. I know PRRS and disease pressure continue to challenge producers. How does Brenneman Pork confront this, and what do you think the key to pig survivability is?
Well, the number one key to pig survivability is lack of PRRS. That's for sure. PRRS is definitely like the name we gave it years ago, persistent reduction in spirit. No, persistent reduction in revenue and spirit. That's what it stands for, and it's still that way today. It's probably worse. But biosecurity, hands down, is probably one of the biggest things. I know wind blows stuff around, but anything we can do to make a clean wean pig is the very best thing because then you start out at least with a chance. But if you take that clean wean pig and he ends up in an environment, and it's not just PRRS, there's some E. coli's that are tough to deal with, but PRRS is hand down the biggest one. But if you take these, because we've had nurseries that are, 1,500 feet or less from our sow farm that sow farm gets PRRS and those nurseries don't because different people chore them. We shower in and out of our nurseries. We have step overs when we come into the office. We take care of, and the feed's the same as it is here at our home farm, but we just are careful with trailers and trucks. So we wash trailers. We have step overs in our nurseries and finishers. We have showers in our nurseries. Of course, our sow farms are all filtered, and not just anybody can go in there, and they're all shower in and out. All the loadouts in our sow farm are positive pressure so that the air can't come back in, the debris can't come back in. Our nurseries are positive pressure out of the loadout so that it keeps the stuff pushed out, even though the air's coming in from the outside to keep the debris out of it. Finishers, when we dump, when we top out, it's always clean trailers. They're always washed and disinfected and dried. When we top out, every trailer's clean. When we go to dump the building, we dump the building, we wash it off, we powder, we use powder disinfectant and powder that disinfectant every load when it's done, and then start cleaning up. And then we got benches in our finishers. So, but I think we just make sure people go where they're supposed to go and they say they're going. But on the grow finish side of things, it's usually a people problem. And so people follow the rules, and we have a lot of, we've been implemented EOS systems, so we have a lot of scorecards. We call our deads in daily. We call our movements in daily. We know where our feed trucks go. We haul the feed to those sites. So it's just watching to see what's going on. And once again, show up and see how people are doing. Show up when they're loading out fat hogs. Show up when they're loading in wean pigs. Show up when they're, when they're moving feeder pigs. And if you see something that's not working, help them to be better at it. Coach them through it, because you got a lot of things to get done in a big hurry on a pig farm.
So with that, what lessons have you learned from managing health challenges, or what investments or protocols have made the biggest difference?
There, in our case, no doubt, the filters have made a big difference on the sow farms. Huge. It's not that we've been totally PRRS free, but I think we could have had more PRRS than we've had. That investment's made a big difference. The truck wash is huge. And the truck wash used right. You can just wash trailers. That's not the answer, but if you can wash trailers and dry them, we do not have bio dry, but we crank the heat up and we run it warm all the time. And we definitely have different trailers and stuff that go to our sow farms. We have different trailers of all our nursery pigs versus finishing and different people. The truck drivers do an amazing job of putting on plastics and taking off plastics and powdering down the back of their trailer and making sure they don't go to the wrong place and stop at the wrong place. All of our drivers, whether it's feed or whether it's hauling pigs, they are phenomenal. And so once again, it starts with the people, our caregivers. They also know the protocol. The data that we get in every day helps us to understand where they've been and where they go. We don't want to force them into a position where they have to go from weaning pigs to loading fat hogs back to taking care of those pigs. So we try and help them with all that. But helping people understand where they should go and not go, and giving them tools to accommodate that is the biggest help. Of course, not having PRRS or PD is the biggest, but we aren't that lucky today.
Is there anything else you're doing to keep your team focused and resilient through health challenges and battles?
The data, the reporting to people that can do something about it. They're always in contact. If they see something, we've coached them very well, so don't go there. But it's a communication. We've always said over the years we've got more communication than we've ever had, and the ability to communicate more than we ever have. Let's use it. And I think that's the key. Let's use our communication skills, and don't be afraid to call somebody and say, hey, I saw somebody go here and they probably shouldn't have been there. It's not tattletaling. It's just part of, okay, we don't want a problem there. And if somebody was concerned enough to give you the message, then you need to be concerned enough to address the message in the right way. But it's all communication, totally, and people and tools.
Communication tools and people. So securing the future, building industry viability through innovation, Rob. With profitability and welfare under constant threat from disease, how do you see the pork industry adapting for long-term success?
The pork industry, the hard part is all that stuff takes money. And in order to do some stuff that we do, you need the money. And in order to do that, you got to make money. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But we're going to have to adapt, because there's a $70 bill difference in a pig that has PRRS and a pig that hasn't had PRRS, or maybe $100 bill if you lost a weaned pig. So the financial incentives there to try and get rid of it. And whether that's communicating and collaborating when you move pigs, don't put these pigs there because you're going to cause somebody, if not yourself, a problem, maybe somebody else a problem. It's not easy, but I think the technology to make our industry better is there. I mean, our total born's going up, our born alive is highest it's ever been. So we know what we've done genetically to get there. But if we can't keep them alive, then we've kind of wasted our time getting there. So we need to go to the next step to make that all happen. And that's going to require some tools. Tools could be maybe more farrowing crates. Tools could be, more trailers to load out, so you are using them as, from this site to that site, or another set of drivers, or whatever it is. We need to adjust to that, and everything we need to adjust to is going to cost us money, but hopefully on the other side it's going to save us money. We just have to do that. collaboration is probably the biggest key with neighbors.
So how can collaboration across the industry improve outcomes?
So in Washington County, for years, we had what they called an area regional control program, where everybody reported if they had a PRRS break or if they had, what virus was there. And so you kind of knew what was going on in the majority of Washington County. And we extended it out past into Johnson, Iowa, and Keokuk and Louisa. And I don't think we got south of Washington. But there was a lot of guys that participated in that. And then it kind of faded out a little bit, but there's still a part of us that still participated and tried not to dump on each other. And it's in the last year and a half, it's coming back because I think people see the value in that. And we've had phone calls and we've made phone calls, because we have PRRS too. You make a phone call and say, hey, we got to move pigs. They need to go here. What's your status? And you say, what can we work out? We've traded buildings before so we didn't cause problems or somebody didn't cause problems in our area. And the one thing you definitely do your best is look out for a sow farm. And it's not always easy. Um, Things happen, sometimes not intentionally, and sometimes things happen because that's the way it's got to be. So you try and avoid those, and there's a lot of that, and I think we'll get better at it because I think right now Washington County is pretty good at it, but I think we can get better at it because that's your collaboration.
Are there any system-wide changes you believe are overdue?
That communication. There's no doubt that there. If you have a building that, if you have finishers that don't have cement loadouts and you got to drag a chute around, or which I don't think there's hardly any of that. Anything to make it so that anything in the system you can make it so it's easier for the people to perform their job. The tools are there to perform their job is the biggest key. But as far as I don't know how you go out and figure out, say, if we make these all system wide, it's going back to what I talked about earlier: communication, communication, communication. That's the best thing we can do.
What about genetics, vaccines, and facility design? What role do they play in the future?
Genetics, there's some more robust genetics than others, and I think they'll keep building on that because with the indexing that they have on, I mean, all genetic companies are making a better pig. So then some days you could maybe use a little more robust pig sometimes, but then when you get the robust pig, then they don't milk as well. So there's kind of some trade-offs there. But genetically, as far as the quality of meat, I think that's going to be huge because if people don't like our product and don't eat it, the other part of that don't matter. But I think we've gained a lot of ground there. Most genetics companies have a really good quality animal. A lot of those happen to be Duroc. There's probably some other ones too. But I think we've improved the taste to help our product. I don't know. Of course, you've got the PRRS resistant gene setting there that if the consumer was to accept it, that would definitely change the industry. It would definitely change the industry. Now, whether or not we'll get it pulled off, I don't know. We'll need less sows if we do, that's for sure, because we'll have more pigs. But I think that vaccines, there are some on the side of vaccines. Of course, you've got your Circo vaccines. Some of those, they work very, very well, Myco. But as far as the PRRS vaccine, I'm not so sure it's not caused some of our problems. I'm not a veterinarian. It's just a comment that I've made. With same thing with the COVID vaccine in humans. I think that's probably made more problems than we had. But that's just not a veterinarian, but just somebody from the heart speaking. So I don't know if vaccines are going to be the answer for the long haul. But there are some killed vaccines that we've used in our sow farm for PRRS. Once they get it, I think they've helped. You always think they help because you did it. I think maybe it got some sows negative a little sooner, but then again, you can sit here today and say, why aren't they negative yet? And we've been doing it. So But I think there is some better, like for rota and some of the E. coli's and stuff. I know there's some vaccines that have come out that have improved that I believe are helping. So there's some vaccines that have helped, no question. And genetics, build tougher genetics, and so I think we're improving all that stuff.
So one thing you're passionate about, Rob, is inspiring the next generation. That's part of Brenneman Pork. So when we look ahead, how do we make pig farming more attractive to kids, grandkids, and even the next wave of leaders?
There, 4-H and FFA. Um, I know showing pigs, showing cattle, it really builds individuals, whether they're girls or boys. It builds individuals, they get to know people, they learn respect for the animals, and that's huge. And as a young guy that didn't think he stood a chance in doing his own thing someday, 4-H and FFA were definitely huge. And of course, my parents and believing in me, and of course, my wife believing in me. I think that if we got to get in and inspire kids to get involved at that level, because that's still at school, and you get them involved at school, then they'll kind of hang with it hopefully the rest of their lives. But and 4-H and FFA both build leadership, and we need leadership in industry as you move ahead. And those are the type of people that you love to work with because they're so positive, and they also have created the animal skills that they need to survive on that end. They know, they've done a great job of educating themselves. And I'm certainly the last person that's going to say you have to go to college to work here, because you don't. I'll take the hardworking high school graduate every day of the week, because that's what I was. I never went to college. But I think as we inspire, I mean, young people inspire me. They inspire me because I'm just all these, when you watch these 4-H and FFA shows, I just get goosebumps. I'm like, I wish I could go back and do that again. It's just so beautiful. Our young kids are just awesome. We got great potential. Washington County, especially. We've got tremendous group of kids.
What do you think motivates the young people?
The parents starts with the parents. I tell Shara, so we're the parents. We got to be the motivators, and we got to be the inspiration. We got to be that people. We got to be that people. Starts with the parents.
Is that what Brenneman is doing as well, or do you do anything else to foster pride and purpose across generations?
Yeah, that's what my goal is. We support FFA, we support F4H, we support young kids that come here and work. Um, we haven't done any of the intern programs for quite some time because it just seemed like it was difficult, but we'll take them. Our staff is, I'm the oldest, and the next one's in the early 50s. And then you step down, there's almost a 25, 30-year difference between me and everybody that runs this place. And so I think that inspiration has come. I believe in young people, and I believe that that's where I'm going to put my time. I want them to have the same opportunities I did, and I want them to grow up knowing that they are the leader, they are the coach, they are what they are, and you can help. I inspire that all day long. That's my passion.
And when it comes to the future of farming, do you think there's a certain messaging we should be using, or
Yeah, I think there is a future to farming. That's the number one message, because it's not always being told. We think it's always going to be the big guy or the big corporations, but granted, it's not going to be easy, but it wasn't easy when I started. And it's going to take some this generation of mine, a little bit older, having faith in those people and coach them along and give them the opportunities. But we've got to help. We've got to have young people in farming, or we're not going to exist. And anybody that thinks an automatic tractor, an automatic planter is the answer, it'll help, but you're going to need their mindset and computer skills to run it. So so I mean, the door's wide open. The opportunity for young people today is as great as it's ever been because there's so many older people in agriculture that are ready to quit, and some of them can't because they can't find anybody to do it, and some of them need to, but they won't because they're not faith in that. But I think young people are they I go crazy around them. I just love it. I'll inspire them all day long.
Now, what about keeping pork production viable for the long term and segueing, what steps does the industry need to take to ensure pork production remains resilient and rewarding for the future generations?
That you've got to have a little fun. You got to have a little fun. And the last 3 or 4 years, or there's been time, it's been hard to have fun. When you lose money and you fight disease, that's all hard to have fun when that's going on. So you got to create somewhere along the line, we've got to make pig farming fun again. And in order to make pig farming fun again, we need to make pigs healthy again. And now, if you're the lucky organization that has pigs somewhere and they're healthy, hats off to you. Keep it going. But we all need to adapt that. But I think, but at the same time, the technology that's coming into our industry is just incredible. And as a young person with the opportunity to go learn, um, in some of these facilities today, you got a lot of technology that you can just sit there and use your iPhone or your Android phone all you want, and it's going to be accomplishing something. With pig flow, for example, that we use in the sow farms, I mean, that's phone in your hand all the time. If phone in your hand all the time makes you happy, come work in a sow farm because you're going to have one in your hand all the time. You know what's going on, you know where everybody's at. So the communication skills there is great. And I think that plays right into this generation that wants to do that. And I think if we make the job attractive enough and we keep some of the headaches out of it, and like when I designed those farms in Missouri, and when I go out today, I don't expect anybody to do anything that I don't want to do. And so then in order for me to do it, I want to like doing it. So I'm thinking I want to make things so that everybody likes doing it, because if I like doing it, there's a pretty good chance somebody else will. But if I walk into a farm and I take a cold shower, I'm like, I'm not doing that. And if that's your first impression on somebody, they're not coming back. So we got to make it fun, we got to make it attractable, and we got to give them the tools because this younger generation, they want it. They want it. I can see it. They want it.
Are there any other policy or business model changes that would help beyond that, Rob?
That is a good question. The thing that I think the to make sure we assure ourselves we have the ability to do it. I'm on the NPPC board right now. We spend time in DC and all with legislators and stuff. But I think anything that we can do there to defend the fact that we still have the right to do it in 5 and 10 years, and we aren't being told what to do. Because if we get to where we're told what to do, you're gonna have a tough time bringing young people in. But I think if we can keep the right to farm, I don't mean that means we do anything. I mean we do it right for sure. But I think as we create policy on that end of things, which we work on every day, being on the board, I think we need to create policies that make it so that the younger generation has the opportunity to do the same thing. There might have to be a few changes in what we do, but we're going to have that. And, when we look at the Farm Bill helps us secure, that's a policy that helps us secure that the next generations get to do what we did.
Now, what about the role of private ownership versus integrators in shaping the future?
That I'm a private ownership guy. And I know a lot of people that are. I believe that ownership is if you own something, you automatically take better care of it. And if we look at our industry, you can see that ownership is a big deal. And that might be owning the building that pigs go in for somebody else, if that's what it takes to get you to the next level, to buy some ground and be a farmer. But the ownership in that building or the ownership in that pig or the ownership in that sow farm, I think it's a big deal. And that's what I believe in. That's where I've come from. Those are the people that I talk to. Um, I think ownership is huge. And ownership doesn't always mean you have to have money in the game. You just got to have skin in the game.
Now, do you see anything else that producers are doing to evolve and to stay competitive and happy?
I think kind of what we touched on earlier, I think people are trying to make their their lives easier with, of course, if you keep disease out, you're going to make it a lot easier, like I keep reiterating. But I think producers that I know have, made hallways bigger, made, brought people in that young people in that want to raise pigs, and that, a lot of the people we bring in that are TN visas out of Mexico, they're all young people. So you got to satisfy their needs. So it's like working with your own children, because if you make it so they love to do what they do, I mean, that's just what you got to do.
So let's talk a little bit about sustainability, Rob, and then we'll end on some rapid fire questions.
Hey,
So, how does Brenneman Pork prioritize sustainability while staying resilient and adaptable?
so my number one reason of sustainability is if my children don't want to do it, then it's not sustainable. That means it's not going to be passed on the way I want it to be passed on. So the first thing I do is I want to make sure that my children want to do it. And if my grandkids want to do it, then I build it to where that keeps them motivated and want to be involved. And I think as sustainability goes, with sustainability also builds resilience and all that. But sustainability in our industry, sustainability is, we I don't, what starts first, the chicken or the egg? But you got a pig, you feed him corn and bean meal and all the other things. You grow that pig up, you take that pig and you take it to market. It feeds us, it gives us all the nutrition we need. And in turn, the byproduct of that pig goes back onto the soil to produce the next crop for that pig. And I think that's as sustainable as it gets. And that pig's growing faster than it did. There's more pigs on a sow than there's ever been. And so it's taken less and less feed and less water to accomplish that. So that's a good thing. I did a presentation a few years ago that when I graduated from high school to today, it's about half the feed, half the water, half the labor, so that makes things sustainable. That means that we're getting more bang out of our buck every day. And I think our industry's done very, very well on a feed conversion, and less pounds of feed to a pound of gain. That's all sustainability. And being in the right place so that people want you there, so they're not trying to drive you out. That's sustainability. But having young people to come back into the business, if we don't have that, there's nothing sustainable. And of course, profitability in the meantime helps. That's for sure, because if you don't make money, it's not sustainable. You got to have a profit somewhere to continue to grow it.
Now, what about your approach to environmental responsibility and resource use? You touched on it a little bit, but anything further, Tad?
Well, all the ground we farm, we have cover crops on. And so we strip till and use cover crops. And so as far as environmentally, so, sure as the manure stays in place, we, you can go to the extent of environmental, all of our ground's pattern tiled, so it keeps the water out, so it doesn't become part of the problem up above. So when you apply the nutrients, whether it's nitrogen or whether it's plow down or whatever it is, it stays right in that area and it don't move. And with the cover crops, If the ground don't wash, it don't move. And we're balancing it out with the manure that comes out of the pigs. So environmentally, I think we're in a very good spot. And Washington County is a tremendous spot for that. It really is.
And how do you balance long-term investments with short-term pressures?
I Some of the short-term pressures you got to be careful of because there's things that some of those pressures have been had and they're short term because they're just something somebody wants to complain about or try and force you into panic mode. So you got to be careful to not just go say that's why I'm going to do it because it might not be the opportunity a year from now after you've spent the money. So I think the investments, anything that we can invest in, I'm a do it faster, bigger, better guy. I like horsepower. Anything we can do, all that, that always intrigues me. So anything we can do to be more efficient, I'm going to spend money on. Anything we can do to help make the job easier for somebody and accomplishes that so that they don't have as much frustration, I'm for. Um, Investing in equipment that it takes to move pigs around, if it's better and healthier and less stress, I'm for. Those are all the type of things that I will invest in. To go out and invest in, put more sows down today is nowhere at the top of my list. I just want to get really good at what I'm doing and be the best at what I do. That's anything that helps that, that's what I'm going to invest in.
I think that's a great philosophy. Now, one of your other philosophies was have fun. So we tie that together. Why do you think having fun is central to your farm culture and success?
So having my son Tim years ago used to accuse me of a fun hater because I didn't like to have fun. But I just like to work. But if you don't have some fun in life, it just gets old and you just create a bunch of grumpy people and that's just not good. You got to enjoy what you do. And if you enjoy what you do, all of a sudden it becomes fun.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's not always fun, in a screaming building or something, but it, in general, go load pigs and have fun doing it. Um, in other words, make the job easy enough so that anybody can do it and that they want to do it when they get there. And then that kind of puts the fun back into it.
Well, let's have some fun and end the show with 5 rapid fire reflections. Are you good for that, Rob?
I'm good.
What's the best tasting pork product you've ever eaten?
Wow. That is a hard question. If you cook pork belly right, it's phenomenal. Ribs are awesome. Um, Pork butt done right. I mean, it's just ground pork burgers. It's just everything done right is just, I love all of it. All of it.
If you could change one thing about the pork industry tomorrow, what would it be?
Lemonade purrs.
What's one piece of advice you give to someone starting in pig farming today?
Show up. Just show up. See what's going on. Create yourself to be a leader and a coach.
Who inspires you most in the pork industry?
The number one person inspired me is my wife, hands down. She's the person that is it gets me there. And then my family inspires me. That's why I get out of bed every day, and all the great people that work here. I get up early every morning, and I've got more stuff on my desk, and I draw more pictures and come up with more ideas than you could ever imagine. I want to make all that better for everybody, entire industry.
And how do you unwind after a long day on the farm?
I usually take a long walk. Um, I take a long walk and then I go have supper with my beautiful wife. And then a lot of times during the week, there's the opportunity to go watch the grandkids do something. There's 12 grandkids and there's ball every night somewhere, or there's 4-H or whatever it is. I love to go watch the grandkids and be with them. They're just a blast.
Thanks for everything you do in the pork industry, Rob.
Jim, thank you. This is the best set of questions I've ever had in an interview. I really appreciate what you do for the industry, and don't stop.
And that's Rob Brenneman on CEOs of the industry.